Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to Aavas Financiers Limited Q1 FY22 earnings conference call. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company which are based on the beliefs, opinions and expectations of the company as on date of this call. These statements are not the guarantees of future performance and involve risks and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Sushil Agarwal, MD and CEO, Aavas Financiers Limited. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for participating on the earnings call to discuss performance of our company for Q1 FY22. With me, I have Ghanshyam Rawat ji, CFO, Himanshu Agarwal, Investor Relations, and other senior member of the management team, and SJ, our Investor Relationship Advisor. The results and the presentations are available on the stock exchanges as well as our company website. I hope everyone has had a chance to look at it. As you all are aware, the country witnessed several severe healthcare crises during the first half of Q1 FY22 on account of second wave of COVID-19. While unlike this year, there was no nationwide lockdown announced by the central government, but various state governments imposed localized lockdowns of various degrees to contain the spread of the infection. As a result, the business was impacted during the first half of the quarter, but with the phased reopening of the states after mid-May, the business also started picking up from the second half of the quarter. For Q1 FY22, we have disbursed 462.5 crore, registering a 117% year-on-year growth. We continue to grow in a calibrated manner and registered AUM growth of 21% year-on-year. All this while, we maintain our operating metrics and delivered profit after tax growth of 20% year-on-year as per India's accounting and 19% year-on-year as per IGAAP accounting for Q1 FY22. Lastly, after the gradual unlocking in the country from the lockdowns imposed to contain the first wave of COVID-19, our exposure under moratorium was at 17.8% as of June 2020. As economic activity picked up in subsequent quarters and the cash flow situation improved for borrowers, their repayment behavior also exhibited a continuous improving trend, and 1+ DPD reduced to 8.21% as of December and further reduced to 6.37% as of March. Based on the resilience of our customer displayed last year, our learning from continuous interactions with them, we expected to see a similar trend this year as well. This time around, our 1+ DPD is 12.67% as of June 2021. So if there is no third wave in the subsequent quarters, and economy continues to bounce back, we remain hopeful of gradual reduction in 1+ DPD based on our experience from last year. I would now hand over the line to Ghanshyam ji, he is CFO, to discuss various business parameters in detail.
Thank you, Sushil ji. Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to our all earnings call. During the quarter, the company borrowed an incremental amount of rupees 6,920 million at 4.62% for 43 months. As of June 21, our average cost of borrowing stood at 7.25% on an outstanding amount of rupees 83,200 million with an average maturity of 127 months. Our long-term credit rating continues to be AA- with a stable outlook from both ICRA and CARE. Despite the highest short-term rating of A1+ for short-term, we continue to maintain zero exposure to commercial paper as a prudent borrowing practice. IGAAP to Ind AS reconciliation has been explained in detail for profit after tax and net worth on slide number 30 and 32 of the presentation. Key parameters. As on 30 June 2021, total number of live accounts stood at 1,28,000. That is 20% year-on-year growth. Total number of branches was 284. That is 33 branches added in last 12 months. Employee count 4,431 as of June 30, 2021. Assets under management grew 21% year-on-year to rupees 96,156 million as on 30th June 2021. Product-wise breakup: home loan 72.7%, other mortgage loan 27.3%. Occupation-wise breakup: salary 39.7%, self-employed 60.3%. Disbursement increased by 117% year-on-year to rupees 4,625 million from Q1 FY22. As on 30 June 2021, average borrowing cost 7.25 against an average portfolio yield of 12.99% resulted in spread at 5.74%. Borrowing. Access to diversified and cost-effective long-term financing from various lenders. A strong relationship with the development financial institutions. Overall borrowing mix as of 30 June is 33% from term loan, 23.1% from assignment and securitization, 24.4% from National Housing Bank, and 18.75% debt capital market. Asset quality: one day past due stood at 12.67%, gross stage 3 stood at 1.14%, net stage 3 stood at 0.86% as of 30 June 2021. During the quarter, resolution plan has been implemented for certain borrowers' accounts as per RBI Resolution Framework 2.0 dated 5th May 2021. Such account with an outstanding amount of rupees 1,149 million has been classified as a stage 2 and provided for as per the regulatory guidelines. Provisioning. Total COVID-19 provisioning stood at 148.2 million as on 30th June 2021. Total ECL provision, including COVID-19 provision and provisioning for Resolution Framework 2.0, stood at 662 million as on 30th June 2021. Liquidity of 23,550 million as on 30th June 2021. Cash and cash equivalent of rupees 11,080 million. Unavailed CC limit of rupees 1,320 million. Documented unavailed sanction from National Housing Bank of rupees 4,550 million. Documented unavailed sanction from other banks of 6,660 million. Profitability. Profit after tax increased by 20% year-on-year to 599 million for 3 months FY22 as per the Ind AS accounting. As per IGAAP, PAT registered a year-on-year growth of 19% to rupees 713 million for 3 months FY22. ROA 2.64 and ROE 9.84 for Q1 for FY22. As on 30 June 2021, we are well capitalized with a net worth of rupees 24,681 million. Our book value per share stood at 314.4 rupees. Now with this, I open the floor for Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Participants, you may press star and 1 to ask the question. The first question is from the line of Abhijit Tibrewal from Motilal Oswal. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking my question. Good afternoon, Sushilji. Good afternoon, Ghanshyamji. Hope both of you are doing well and the rest of the Aavas team are also safe and sound. My first question was around the sharp deterioration that we have seen in your 1+ DPD. And I think this looks far more pronounced given that the other peer, which reported yesterday, has not kind of reported this kind of a deterioration. And sir, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this kind of a stress build-up we had seen only during demon last time. So if you could please guide what was your experience like during demonetization, and when can we reasonably expect these 1+ DPD numbers to start getting normalized towards this 5% levels that you have guided for in the past?
Yeah, Abhijit. So Abhijit, if we'll compare, like last year when the first lockdown happened, April, May, the moratorium given to them customers was around 24%, and in June it was around 18%. If you will take the similar situation, now this time moratorium has not been given and the restructuring guideline is already open. So out of around 129,000 customers, we have given on around 1,400 customers restructuring, and as of June, only 3,000 customers has not paid the June installment. So if you will take that number, this is around somewhere around 2.5% of the book. So in June, almost 97% of the customer has repaid their installments. So now in April and May, when the lockdown happened, so certain customer has missed their one installment or two installments. So like in March end, it was number was somewhere around 6.5%, 1+. So around 6% customer missed either one installment or two installments. But at the June end, overall out of 12.37, only 2.5% has not paid the installment. So means from June onward, around 10% customer has normalized their account. And in further July, out of these 3,000, already 2,000 account has paid the July installment also. So means things are getting normalized. But one or two installment for some account which has been not paid because of the COVID impact. So according to business requirement or maybe salaried customer who has say 25,000 rupees salary and 8,000 installment. So they may take 1 quarter, 2 quarter, or some of the businesses take longer tenure to normalize their 1 or 2 installment which is pending. But current month installment they have already started paying. So I don't think so that is much of distress, but this is the right position of the portfolio at this point of time.
I mean, if I were to just summarize that, given the kind of collections that we are looking at now, if the economy were to actually recover, we can also expect a sharp improvement in the 1+ DPD number in the next 2 or 3 quarters.
Yeah, so if third wave will not come and economy is on the upscale side, yes, in next 2 to 3 quarters, because customers already started paying the current month installment, so there is no further stress which is getting built up in terms of stage 2, stage 3. Yes, we have certain more requests which is pending for restructuring. We have restructured around 110 crore rupees in first quarter. Certain more requests are there which is pending, and our credit team is working with each of the customer. But I think it will be like our collection efficiency around 98-99% in June itself, and we think from here onwards, I think this will gradually come down in next 2 quarters or 3 quarters.
Okay, thank you. And the last question that I had was on your disbursements. So Sushil, this time the disbursement mix suggests that they were slightly skewed towards other mortgage loans. And I think in your PPT also you have suggested that about 15% of your other mortgage loan disbursements were towards MSME loans compared to about 7% in Q1 of 2020. So why this is interesting today is, I mean, while we did some channel checks for affordable housing financiers in May, we always used to hear that a lot of top-up loans are actually happening from the affordable housing financiers in May, when there was not a lot of organic housing loan demand. So what was our experience like when it comes to, let's say, top-up loans? And maybe if you could just give a breakup of your other mortgage loans as well.
So, Abhijit, in our non-housing loan, top-up will be very minuscule. We have not given any top-up to, I don't think it will not be more than even 1% of the disbursement or the total numbers. Second thing is, as soon as the lockdown happened, so home loan customer loan got sanctioned, but in disbursement there is difficulty because of property paper not getting registered, and in construction cases first stage is only 10%, 20%. So that get deferred, and if you will see month on month number, and there was some spillover from last quarter on the non-housing side. So only in April we have more non-housing loan disbursed. May was around 70, 65, 35, and June is 72, 28%. So June is the normal business month which has happened for us, and there our housing loan disbursed. So if you will see last Q1 FY21 also, so housing and non-housing was 70-30%, and it will leave 1 month aberration. We are on that same track of 73, 27, 75, 25. So and I think going forward we will have the same kind of disbursement trajectory for all our disbursements.
Okay. If I can just squeeze in one last question, which has kind of got me curious, that we opened one branch in the state of Odisha. And if I remember reading one Experian data, it suggested that only about 2% of the total outstanding housing loans in the 5 to 10 lakh ticket size used to come from Odisha. In the overall pie of 100, just 2% was contributed by Odisha. So while I understand that the competition there is low, and while you might have a first mover kind of an advantage there, but if you could just briefly tell us what was your thought process in entering, let's say, Odisha, where I think the per capita income is low, and maybe from what I gather, it is also a difficult market. So if you could just share some thoughts around our strategy of entering Odisha.
So Abhijit, we are consistent in our branch opening approach, and state penetration approach. So as we have done in last 10 years, every 5 years bracket, we open 3 to 4 new states, and then go penetration in the taluka level, and that's the way we do the business. When we select the branches in the state, we do it on the 2 bases. One is we have penetrated data, so state, country level, state level, district level, taluka level, population, number of families living there, different income groups, what are the number of housing loan exist. So housing loan penetration less than 5 to 7%, 1 plus less than our benchmark number, 90 plus less than our benchmark number. So those areas or market we open so that our branches can sustain for next 10 to 15 years for the business in that. So now we have completed 2 blocks of 5 years. In the first year we opened Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, MP. Second block we opened Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Uttarakhand. So now in next 5 years again we intend to open 3 to 4 states. So in the first year we are opening Karnataka and Odisha. So Odisha again we will open 5 to 6 branches. First branch opened in Q1, and in Karnataka also one portion of our branches are very much near to Maharashtra, so it's a contiguous distribution, Hubli belt, and the rest branches we will open as per our program. So there is no change in our penetration policy as per state in the district level, tehsil level branches, and we will keep on same with our analytics numbers and ground level experience. So I think wherever housing penetration is low and the market is upswing, we want to capture that market because we are in the affordable housing segment, and where there is less penetration, we see more scope. But yes, on asset quality side, our practices, we are confident now after running 11 years and 280 branches that our processes are well versed. But still in new branches, as we have already disclosed in our last conversation also, we go very slow. First 3 years, there is no sales target. we learn from the cash flows, seasonality, how the market behaves, and then we go deeper. So we will continue our same approach, being more risk-averse in the new market. But again, in this new 5-year stack, we will open 3 to 4 new states. But overall branches, like we open 30 to 40 branches every year. So if we open around 100 branches in the next 4 to 5 years, 60-70% branches will be in existing states, which are 8 to 9 states existing, and 20 to 30% branches will be in new states, where we go slow for first 3 years. Hope I have reiterated the entire branch opening process and policy, which we are following last 10 years.
Yes, Sushilji, thank you for patiently answering my questions, and I wish you and the Aavas team the very best for the next quarters.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Udit from Ambit Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, Udit.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. My questions were, what is the provisioning policy around restructured assets? So are you following a 10% provisioning norm, or are you prudently providing a little more as per the ECL model? Because we've seen some of the peers doing that. So that's my first question. The second question I had was, if you could spell out the amount of interest rate or interest reversals during the quarter, the absolute amount, and if you could tell us the assets held for sale number as of June 21.
Thanks, Udit. First, I'm just taking the first question on the prudent policy around the restructured account. We adopted more prudent policy towards the ECL guideline. So for whatever restructured account we have done during this quarter, we have provided around 14% provisioning on that asset.
Okay.
I think that was your second question was around interest reversal. I think we could not able to understand, but as I think last time at annual closure, I think I explained this thing in detail. We have adopted a more prudent policy around interest recognition. We don't recognize any interest income on the stage 3 assets.
Correct. So in this quarter, whatever new assets have been slipped, so there is no reversal then in that case you're saying?
Yeah, we didn't book the income that.
Okay.
Because last year we changed, I think, prudent. We adopted our prudent policy. Earlier we used to do like that, but under Ind AS we changed that policy. But after we again moved back to our original policy, we are not recognizing any income on the stage 3 assets.
So the decline in yield in this quarter from if I just calculate, not the reported yield, is it only because of the direct assignment not being there?
No, two things. Udit, there are two things. First, we have dropped our base rate by 15 basis points from 1st of April, which we announced in last quarter. So 15 paisa rate वहाँ से कम हुआ, and
rest is normal business.
And then rest is a normal business.
Those decline is a normalcy.
Okay. And on the, if you could tell us the number on asset sales for sales.
Yeah, it is 18.6 crore rupees.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Kunal Shah, ICICI Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. So, firstly, in terms of the overall ECL provisions at 85 odd basis points, so how comfortable we would be? So obviously there would be rollbacks and upgrades which would happen from 1+ DPD. But if you overall look at it, maybe in 31 to 90-day bucket, then does it seem sufficient, or maybe the policy would be the way we had seen 70 bips kind of a credit cost compared to earlier years average? Could it be higher this particular fiscal, and will keep on inching up the provisioning?
Yeah, thanks, Kunal. As we adopted very consistent and a prudent policy around ECL thing. During this quarter, as I explained in earlier questions, we have recognized certain asset restructure where we have created that asset sit under the stage 2, where we have provided higher provision at 14%, and at stage 3 we provide a provision of around 22% as per the ECL calculations. But we are quite confident. I think we are ECL provision at 0.85%, and we don't think any further, I think, major change will happen towards the overall ECL provision rate.
Okay. So then, given this kind of a situation, overall, we should see the credit cost settling down and normalizing to where it was earlier in terms of pre-COVID level.
Yeah. Apart from that, I want to update one more thing here. Like total ECL provision is 66 crore rupees as per the, if you refer the presentation. This 66 crore rupees also include 31 crore rupees provision we have created on account of COVID phase 1 and COVID and recent restructured account.
Sure. And there would be pipeline as well of restructuring, wherein some further provisioning would be needed, because I think we would not be done.
But 31 crore rupees already we have created.
Yeah, that is created. Yeah.
On account of stress.
Okay. And further pipeline which could be there, that we will have to again create more provisioning. So whatever maybe 10, 14 odd %, that will just get added.
Yeah, Kunal, that will depend. We will do reassess of earlier accounts also, how they are performing in the next quarter, as well as if the fresh addition will be there, so accordingly that provision will be created.
Sure. And in terms of the nature of restructuring, if you can highlight how it has been given to the customers.
Yeah. So, Kunal, government announced this around 5th of May. We got the board policy approved, but interimly, because customers were having the moratorium experience, so as soon as lockdown happened, we started receiving applications around it. And as per the board approved policy and as per the RBI guideline, we created a proper setup. We have given customers option to apply for that through various modes of communication. And as soon as we were getting the communication, initially, I think for some 20-25 days, it was difficult to go to customer, assess the business at his business place. So we did the virtual kind of assessment. And once the lockdowns started opening up, we started visiting the customer place, looking at business, looking at cash flow, GST returns, wherever even salaried customers. So they said that their salary is coming less. We take the bank statement, and so we completed the entire process, and then all those cases based on the credit remuneration went to committee, and wherever committee was convinced that yes, restructuring is in the right mode and this restructuring will get success, then only we have given these restructuring approvals. Still, we are working on some of the more applications. We were not able to process 100% of the applications because of the time lag and accessibility. Certain time customers have not given the documentation. But looking at the current numbers, I think some customer has withdrawn their even restructuring applications also, because now the business has come down to normalcy very fast. And some of the customers, so in the earlier, we have said that there might be 2 to 2.5% kind of restructuring which can come on board, but I think now the number will be lesser than that number.
And moratorium would be for 1 year. How would this be?
No, so it's as per customer requirement. Certain time 3 months, certain time 6 months, 9 months, according to customer requirement. And the assessment of the credit team, both the things matching. Accordingly, we have created the thing.
Sure. And last question, in terms of securitization, what would be the overall view for the full year? Maybe this quarter we had not done anything as such, but otherwise in terms of the securitization, how should we expect it going forward for next 9 months?
Kunal, as we articulated our management thesis around the assignment transactions, we take assignments as our funding tool. Depend upon the business growth and depending upon the whole price availability in the market, we do the assignment transactions. So it's purely depend upon that. Like last year also, quarter one was we didn't done any assignment transactions. Similarly, this quarter also we didn't done any because other funds are available at a very competitive price to us. Like you referred, if we mentioned in our call, I think fresh fund we raised during this quarter is a much competitive price. So we didn't done any assignment transaction during this quarter. But overall basis, you can refer कि last few year trend, similar trend will be maintained for this year also.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Bharat Shah from ASK Investment Managers. Please go ahead.
Hi, Sushilji and Ghanshyamji. Namaskar. Just one question. The credit cost that we've written off in June quarter, numbers apart and technical provisioning apart, are these, in your opinion, more than probably likely to be incurred or reflects your good judgment as to where the cost should be and that is how it is provided?
So, good afternoon, Bharat Sahab. Actually, with auditors, every 6 months we do the reassessment on loss given default and PD ratios, and same thing we will do in so it's June 30th September, every 6 months we do, and accordingly whatever ratios come we provide that. So earlier basis it is 21.4%, which has entirely seen the COVID first wave also. COVID second wave is not much that severe like the COVID one, because I've told earlier it was a 17% moratorium, and now in June only 2.5% per customer has not given the installment. So I think more or less we will go by that model, and on that stage 3 comes around 22%. This restructuring guideline we have followed, but here also we have provided as per the ECL model, and over and above we have so restructuring and COVID provisioning is somewhere around 31-33 crore rupees. I think that is sufficient, and going forward also, even if portfolio behaves very well, we intend to keep this as a buffer in the balance sheet, and we'll try to strengthen balance sheet further so that we benchmark ourselves against the best practices, maybe going in a way where we can provide maybe most of the stage 3 as a most of the provision. But technically you are right. Right now it's a technical provision, and hope so if COVID-3 will not be there, we will have much better results than this.
So, Sushilji, 33 crore is buffer and entirely futuristic kind of conservative provision after recognizing. Sorry?
31 crore rupees.
No, so the 31 crore is entirely buffer provision over and above specific identified and likely credit cost. 31 is entirely additional contingent amount sitting as a provision.
The total provision is 66 crore rupees. It includes 31 crore rupees additional provision we made on account of COVID phase 1 and the COVID phase 2.
Right. So it's a buffer provision. There is no direct identified likely cost, but it is precaution.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nischint Chawathe from Kotak Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. My question actually pertains to your, incremental funding cost. I think somebody you mentioned that you've raised money at something like 4.62% this quarter. I just wanted to understand, A, which are the sources from which you are raising money, and B, how sustainable do you think such low cost of funding would be?
So, yeah, Nitin Ghanshyamji will revert, but I will say when we raise money overall every year, so there are different instruments, so NHB funding, long-term bank borrowing, assignment, and NCD. And at different time of market, different money is available at competitive prices. So in Q1, we have raised most of the money from NHB, but in overall, NHB money is raised every year around same costing. Last year also, I think it was around same costing. And rest of the money from different instruments maybe will raise in different parts of quarter. So first, NHB money is available around at that price, and rest of the instrument, anyway, the price which is prevailing in market, we are able to reduce, but it will not go further below 725 next 6 to 9 months. That is our foreseeable future. But yes, we will keep on borrowing at very competitive prices in the going forward also.
Sushil, I think Sushil has very well covered. If you have further more question around the cost of borrowing, then I will try to answer.
No, so if I recollect rightly, I think NHB refinancing used to be like 6 to 7%, right? So 4.6 appears to be rather low number.
Yeah, no, NHB has a different product which starts from sub 3% to somewhere 6 or 7%. All these lending, certain products are a fixed rate product which gives to everyone the same rate. Certain products they give linked to the HFC rating framework which they have internally. It starts from 3% to it can go up to, let's say, 6 to 7 or 8% also, depending upon the HFCs. But as Sushilji mentioned, we are at 7.25% at the June end. So we are. It looks so that we are now almost has become very competitive as overall cost of borrowing. Looking at the current interest rate and likely in coming quarter scenario.
But this 4.62 facility, do you think such low sub 5% facilities from NHB will continue?
Let me again elaborate. Like today we have around remaining borrowing sanction 455 crore rupees. We mentioned in one of the another 24 slide number. So out of 455 crore rupees, there may be certain some components they can give us a lesser price. Certain amount may come at a higher price because they have their own mechanism to give a different product to different institutions.
Okay, so it is better to just benchmark with the 7 to 7.2% number is what you are suggesting. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Karthik Chellappa from Buena Vista Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. Am I audible?
Yes, Karthik ji. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much, Sushilji and Ghanshyamji, for the opportunity. So I have 3 questions. The first one is, if we were to look at our NPA in the other mortgage loan segments, possibly about 3 years back, this was in the region of about 0.25, 0.26%. And this has now crossed about 1%, which is almost a 4-fold increase and is now almost equal to the home loan gross NPA. So what is it about the segment that the deterioration has been far sharper than home loans?
Yeah, so Karthik ji, as you know, the different business segments have got impacted because of COVID. And again, when we started this business, it was initial phase. We lend this portfolio around 14 to 16% rate. And at that rate, we presume that there might be 1 to 1.5% kind of NPA. And even after COVID, this portfolio is showing into that acceptable trajectory. But nevertheless, we assume that this portfolio will behave much better once the COVID impact will be lesser.
Okay, got it. And Sushilji, the 12.7% of one DPD, how will that get split between self-employed and salaried, and which are the states that are above this average?
So, Karthik, can we get back to you on this? Himanshu will give the number. Right now, Reddit is not available with me.
Okay, not a problem. I'll get it later. The last question, Sushilji, is
question
if
is
we were to look at the
12.6 between salaried and self-employed. No?
Yes, salaried and self-employed, and which are the states that are actually above this average?
Okay, so we will give this data. Try to give this data by end of call, or maybe we will publish in transcript of the meeting.
Okay, not a problem, Sushilji. The last question is, if I were to look at the restructuring book of about 115 crore, which you have done, and looking at the number of customers of about 1,400, I get an average size of about 8.2 lakhs, which is almost equal to basically the ticket size of our loan. So does this mean this restructuring portfolio is typically very, very early vintage customers, and what would explain this phenomenon if true?
No, I don't think so.
No. Karthik, I think there is nothing as early vintage, but if we this 1,400 customer plot on very average ticket size versus our pool average ticket size entire home loan, we don't see any aberration in the ticket size who sought this restructuring.
Okay, so these are not like very typical early vintage 1-2 year old kind of customers. It is a mix, but it is just that the average is closer to 8.2 lakhs.
I think last 10 years, our average ticket size is somewhere around this number. So I don't think so. Just give me 1 minute.
Sure.
So Karthik, almost 75 to 80% of the portfolio is more than 2 years vintage.
Okay, of the restructured book, about 75% of the restructured book is more than 2 year vintage, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much, Sushilji and Ghanshyamji, and wish you and the team all the very best for the remaining quarters. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Karthik.
And
the next question is from the line of Piran Engineer from CLSA. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir, and congrats on the quarter. I just had a couple of questions. Firstly, on slide 24, can you just explain to us when you say that the outstanding tenure of borrowings is 125, 130 months, but on the left-hand side, when we look at the ALM, there are no borrowings above 10 years. And I understand ALM is for residual maturity and not from the start, but still, and only 20% of it is more than 5 years. So how do we exactly reconcile this data of length of the borrowing?
If I understood your question correctly, so let me explain your weighted average tenure of the borrowing. Weighted tenure is a borrowing. When we source a loan, let's say 10 years, so it gets counted for the 10 years. If we take a loan from National Housing Bank of a 15 years, so the tenure is counted as a 15 years. Similarly, if assignment transaction happens door-to-door maturity, so that also comes because that also get a door-to-door maturity around that basically. If we take let's say we took a NCD certain with a multilateral institution like ADB, IFC and CDC around 7 years, 8 years. So that get counted as actual maturity of 7 years bullet repayment. So accordingly, the average maturity gets computed on the borrowing side. Similarly, this ALM comes out of the remaining assets, remaining liability tenor basically.
But that's my question, sir, that in that case, intuitively, in the ALM chart, most of your borrowings, like right now, if I see out of 6,600 crores of borrowings, 5,200 is less than 5 years residual maturity. Only about 1,400 crores is more than 5 years, only about 20%. So that's my point. If the borrowing tenure is so long, why is it like this?
Yeah. So Piran, I think if you will see the breakup of our borrowing, around 23% is from NHB, that is mostly long tenure borrowing. Then around 22% from assignments, which is around again 16 to 17 years. Then most of the term loan borrowing from the bankers, which is around 10 years. That should be commensurate with the loan tenure, so that is around that. And then we have around 15% borrowing from NCD and all those things, where average tenure is from 5 to 7 years. So so if you take this average, this weighted average of borrowing into what is the door-to-door maturity of the loan. So right side table is as per that, and the left side table
is residual maturity.
Is the residual maturity.
Okay, but now, sorry to harp on this, but now, for example, this quarter we raised 400 and odd crores or something from NHB. And as you're saying, it is 15-year money.
No,
then
it is not.
As of,
we have mentioned 45 months.
This year, this is the average maturity of 45 months.
Okay. But I mean, in the last couple of quarters, you all would have raised some money which is more than 10 years maturity, right? And But in the ALM, there is nothing which is more than 10 years remaining. And very less which is between 5 and 10 years also.
I think some
or is my understanding incorrect?
Yeah, I think there's some confusion at your end. This left side is a residual maturity. Left side is a table is made only on the on book balance sheet basically. Assignment is not there because that become off book item on the balance sheet date basically. But when the right side you see, it's the entire borrowing, including assignment and PTC, assignment, securitization, everything is there. So those two things are the different when you see.
Okay.
If you want to separately connect with the Himanshu, he will explain you in detail.
Yeah, I'll do that. And just one other question: how much ECLGS have we done till date?
14.6 crore rupees.
Okay, great. Thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nidesh Jain from Investec. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity, sir. So firstly, I missed the ECLGS number. What is the ECLGS number that we did in Q1? And what is the cumulative ECLGS disbursement that we did till now?
ECLGS was 13.60. Yeah. So total disbursement 16 crore हुआ था. Current outstanding is 14.6.
14.6 crore. And similarly, what is the current total outstanding of the restructured book?
अभी तो किया है restructure. As I said, we have given that number.
114 crore rupees.
114.96 crore rupees.
Till Q4 there was no restructuring.
No. Sorry?
No.
No, we have not done any restructuring in the past. No?
Yeah, sure. And then lastly, if I look at the AUM mix, the share of housing loan in last 3 years have reduced from 80 to 83%, to around 73%. So going forward, how do we see this AUM mix? And at the same time, the share of salaried customer has gone up in our mix. So how do we see these two mix?
First, I need to correct that we were never 82 and 18. Last 3 years data 75.1 to 24.9, and today it is 73.27. and year-end it was 73.5 to 26.5, and we want to remain in the same bracket. It was never 80 to 18.
Okay, understood. Sure, sir. That's it for my side.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vikas Kasturi from Focus Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Sir, I had 3 questions related to your business.
Vikas, sorry to interrupt, your voice is coming muffled and a bit of an echo. Can I?
Yeah, sorry. Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. So I had 3 questions. So the first one is, why is turnaround time so important for the borrower? And the reason I ask is that for a lot of borrowers, you are probably the only lender. So why is turnaround time so important, sir?
So I think we have explained in our processes. We want to be best, adopt best practices, and we want to give our customers best experiences, and all the processes which we have built in the company is around how we can improve our customer experiences, because in the long term, for company survival, customer experience is the key. And there's where we have invested in technology, digital processes, analytics, and revamping our processes in view of new technology. 4 years back, we were somewhere around 22 days, and now we have come around 12 days. But as a company, we want to reduce it to maybe 1 or 2 days, though it will take time. But certain portion of the customer, we are able to do that in this phase. So any repeat customer and any existing customer which is asking for a pending disbursement, now we have come down to 1 day time also. So it will be our company's continuous process improvement and pursuit that we remain competitive, relevant, and give our customer best experience by reducing the turnaround time of all our processes. That is very much needed in our business.
Thank you, Sushilji. But I have read all your documents, and the point that I'm unable to understand is that for a lot of borrowers, right, they do not get loans from banks and other institutions, and that is why they come to Aavas, right? And even amongst out of 100 applications, I think you reject nearly 70% of those applications. So my question is, like, for a lot of them, you are the only lender. So the simple fact that you are lending to them itself would be a big, thing for them. But I'm positively surprised, and I appreciate what you're doing here, sir. But I'm just trying to understand that you have laid a lot of emphasis on turnaround time in all your annual reports. Also, you mentioned this. So I was just trying to understand that for a borrower, why is it so important?
So, take me in the right spirit. My son got 18 3 months back, and he was a new customer to the bank. When he entered into the bank and asked, "I want to open a current saving account with you," and banker asked him, "Down for 15 minutes, and I will try to open, and it will take 1 day." And then he asked, nowadays bank is publishing, we can open the account in 5 minutes time. So it doesn't necessary that it's a client who is unbanked or who is coming to formal lending system first day, and that he don't want his processes to be on time, and he is not dealing with a credible lender or banker. So I think on that side, we don't differentiate between a customer who is coming for the first time, who is first time borrower, who is first time coming to the normal lending system, and somebody who has 750 CIBIL score. We want to give same kind of experience, and as I've told you, as a management, we think that is the most important aspect of survival for company in affordable housing segment and kind of lender we are. That is of the prime importance of customer experience, and we continue to focus on this, and we will try to even better this going forward. So this is a key attribute of our company's deliverables, and we don't differentiate between a experienced customer from the banking and non-experienced customer for the banking.
Thank you, Sushilji. One more question. So could you just provide some estimates of your business per branch for your mature branches and newer branches? Some rough numbers would also be helpful.
Yeah. So we have, as earlier explained in different forums and calls, we have 4 categories of branches, A, B, C, D. The branch classification depends on the population of the town, number of families living there, and how we see the potential of that branch over a period of next 15 years. So like if some town has population of 4 lakh, divide by 4 or 5, you have 80,000 to 1 lakh families. And if we try to consider that next 15 years, we will try to penetrate 5% of the customer base. So we need to do 5,000 home loans in 15 years. So divide by 180 months in 15 years. We need to do 20 to 25 files per month. So 20 to 25 files per month with our ticket size of 8, 9, 10 lakh rupees, it comes around 2 crore rupees of the business. So when a new branch starts, it works around 50 to 60% efficiency, and gradually within 3 years, 90% plus branches come on 90 to 100% capacity. So that's how our business model works, and I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, yes. One last question, Sushilji. What is the average tenure of the loan?
So we give a 3 to 4 kind of loan. One is home loan for construction, one is home loan for purchase, MSME loans, LAP loans. Then there is a differentiation between customers who are salaried, who are self-employed. So according to cash flow judgment, we provide tenure from mostly 3 to 20 years. Average tenure of our portfolio is somewhere around 14 years, door-to-door maturity. On behavioral term, our portfolio tenure is 7.5 to 8 years.
Okay. Thank you, Sushilji. Thank you for all your answers.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Anand Bhavnani from White Oak. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir. 2 questions. Sir, that funding that you raised at 4.6%, does it come with any kind of, cap? Because the funding is at a lower rate, so that NHB kind of cap the rate that you can further charge, and in this particular case, does it apply?
Yes, in terms will apply.
Yeah. There is one funding which comes from the NHB, which has a interest cost around 3%, where they put a cap of onward lending also, which is around 6, between the onward cap come between 6 to 7%, depending upon the GSEC rate prevailing in that period.
Does cap apply to this funding, 4.6%?
No, for that there is no cap.
Okay.
Cap comes only one particular borrowing.
Sure, sir, sure. And secondly, sir, our overall restructured book is 114 crores, and the provision for restructured book is 31 crores. Did I get the numbers correct?
No. 31 crore rupees is COVID provision plus restructuring provision.
Restructuring provision could be around 14-15 crores because we are doing 14% provisioning, right? So for 114 crores, it might be around 15 crores.
Yeah.
Got it, sir. Thank you very much. I'll come back and listen for additional questions.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shreepal Doshi from Equirus. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. So my question was with respect to the 1+ TPD number that we have got. So what would that number be for states like Maharashtra and Rajasthan?
Are you there?
Yeah, give us some time. Yeah. So, Maharashtra, so there is only difference of 2.5% between Rajasthan and Maharashtra. Not much of a difference.
Okay. So, sir, if you can give any one of the two's number, that will be.
So Rajasthan is around 13%.
Okay. And so what has been our bounce rate for June 20, March 21, and June 21?
Right now, I don't have. Hello?
Yeah.
Tell me which date you require.
So, sir, as on June 20, March 21, and June 21.
March 21 and June. So I can tell you June 21, it is around 19%, with the COVID impact there.
Right.
Last two numbers not readily available with me at this point of time.
No issues. I'll collect it later on. So just one understanding I wanted. So when we have given a home loan to a customer and he's been paying on time, and after a year or two, if he wants additional money and if we give a top-up loan, so in that context, how does the loan then get classified? Does it still remain as a home loan, or does it get classified as a LAP?
So there are three scenarios. If the extra loan, top-up loan is required to construct the further home. So say first, he has taken a loan for ground floor. Now he wants to construct first floor. Then this will be classified under home loan for construction. And if the top-up loan is required for his business, personal purposes, daughter's marriage, or some other thing, then it will be classified in non-home loan category.
So then the entire amount, so for example, if the earlier he had taken a loan of 10 lakh rupees, now that got run down and outstanding is 5 lakh, and if he takes additional 2.5 for business purpose, then the entire 7.5 gets classified as MSME.
5 lakh is considered home loan, 2.5 lakh is considered non-home loan.
Okay, got it. And sir, the restructuring that we have already done, so how do you see, I mean, incrementally, do you think the percentage, like right now it is 1.2%, how do you see that number eventually closing?
Initially, we started and we told that it can be around 2 to 2.5%, but after Q1 experience, I think this number will be lesser than that number.
Okay, got it. And so one last question, like since our, one.
Shreepal, can you hear us? So the line for the participant dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question for today. I will now hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Yeah. Thank you all for attending the call. I hope we have reverted most of your questions and queries. To summarize, we continue to focus on improving customer service and being transparent with our customers. As mentioned in the last earnings call, we have reduced Aavas Financiers Limited prime lending rate by 15 basis points with effect from 1st of 2021. So that got affected this quarter. And thank you so much for all your time. For any further information, we request you to get in touch with Himanshu in our investor relation team or SGA, our investor relationship advisor. They would be happy to help you. And thank you very much for patience, listening, and cooperating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Aavas Financiers Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you.